It's the millennial dollar question. Is the millennial mindset contributing to the auto sector slowdown? A statement by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman speaking in Chennai yesterday has caused a flutter when she said that the shift to BS6 and a change in habits of millennials were part and reason for the auto industry's woes. Interestingly, it's not the first time this claim has been made. Just last week, top industrialist Uday Kotak made a similar observation during a conference of auto manufacturers. Let's first play out for you exactly what the Finance Minister said.
Automobile sector in particular have been affected by several things, inclusive of the BS6 movement, inclusive of that registration fee related matter, which we have deferred till June, inclusive of the mindset. Some studies do tell us the mindsets of the millennials who are now preferring not to commit an EMI towards buying an automobile, instead would prefer to have Ola and Uber and everything else, or take the metro. So a whole lot of factors are influencing the automobile sector. We are all seized of the problem, we try to solve it for them.
Interestingly, Transport Minister Nitin Gadkari came out today and clarified, saying that the Finance Minister had been misquoted.
फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर ने अनेक कारणों में कहते हुए एक कारण कहे थे, दुर्भाग्य उसको कंट्रोवर्सी उसकी हुई उचित नहीं है. उनके पीछे जो भाव था उनका वो समझना चाहिए कि जो अनेक कारण है उसमें से एक कारण ये है, ये उन्होंने कहा.
So some questions here. Is there any kind of data that backs the millennial theory? How does the millennial theory then explain a drop in sales of two-wheelers or tractors or commercial vehicles? Is the millennial theory actually reflecting trends outside urban India as well? But most importantly, does the auto industry now have to come to terms with changes in buying habits? That means changing strategy permanently as well. To speak on this, I am joined today by Nikun Sanghi, Director of FADA, that's the Federation of Automotive Dealers, Gaurav Vangal, Country Lead Automotive Forecast at IHS Market, R. Sriram, Resident Editor at the Economic Times, and R. Jagannathan, Editorial Director at Swaraj Magazine. Welcome to all of you. I'm going to start with you, R. Sriram, because you have been putting out this millennial theory long back, even before the Finance Minister Uday Kotak said it. I remember you saying on this show that maybe the way millennials are behaving has something to do with the auto sales. There's been a huge hue and cry today about it, social media fodder as well. Do you think there is merit in the millennial theory?
I think there is definitely some merit in the millennial theory. I wouldn't say that it is the only reason that is pulling down the auto sales. It certainly can't be. There are a lot of other reasons as well, including high cost, including the level of household debt, including the fact that probably at this point of time, given the fact that the auto industry hasn't really had any exciting new launches, the excitement factor has come down a bit, and there are a lot of other price and cost factors and tax factors as well. So I wouldn't say that the millennial theory is the only reason that is actually pulling down auto sales, but it's definitely a contributing factor. Now, to what extent it is a contributing factor, whether it's 10%, 20% or less than that, whether it is just in a few pockets in the metros or whether it's widespread phenomenon in the metros, I mean, we'll have to do a far more deeper study to understand this, but anecdotal evidence do certainly show us that the millennial habits are changing. And this is contributed by a lot of other things. I mean, for instance, there are people out there, I think Zoomcar for instance, who are offering cars to youngsters or to anybody who wants and who can use the car for about a month or so, or for a particular period of time after paying a charge, and then return the car back. So it's not just the fact that it's not just a tourist thing, that you go to a particular place and then you hire a car and then you drive around and then return the car back. Even in a metro city like Bombay or Bangalore or any other place, you can take a car, keep it with you for a month and then return it back. So I think there are as the Finance Minister also said, and as many pundits and experts will say, there are a lot of factors, but this is definitely an important factor. And don't forget, India is not the only place that is seeing a massive drop in car sales. We are seeing this in China, we are seeing this in Europe.
No, that
there
is true. But
the
let's talk
phenomenon
about,
seems to be global.
Yeah.
That it's not just, yeah.
Okay. No, so the millennial theory,
Sure.
interestingly, is definitely a part of it. But then a few questions that you yourself raised, Sriram, I'll take them to Nikunj Sanghi next. If millennials don't want to buy cars and don't want to commit to EMIs, then why are sales of two-wheelers, of commercial vehicles, of tractors falling as well? Do you see merit in the millennial theory, and how widespread is it? Of course, there has been no clear study to talk about it, but how widespread do you think it is, Nikunj Sanghi? Do you subscribe to it?
So I would definitely agree with Sriram to the extent that the millennial theory does have some merit. There are millennials who would not want to own a car, or who would want to experiment with different brands, different variants, different segments, and therefore they do not want to get stuck to one car by buying one car. But how far widespread is it, or is it a reason for the downfall of car sales? Definitely not one, because the shared mobility or the Ola Uber thing is limited only to about 20-30 cities of the country as of now, and definitely not beyond that. Secondly, there are times where you don't want to use an Ola or an Uber when you're going out with family, when you're going for a picnic, when you're doing a weekend. Definitely you want to own you have to have your own car. And then the aspiration, then the fact that you own a car, you drive a car, you flaunt your car, those are all reasons why even millennials would want to own a car. But yes, the convenience of an Ola or an Uber or a shared mobility are there, which they would want to exploit, but definitely not the only reason. And I think the finance minister also said that this was one of the reasons it was impacting. So probably it is impacting car retails, but...
So things that everyone agrees on. No one is saying that all auto sales have fallen because millennials maybe in urban pockets don't want to buy. It's one of the reasons. But is it big enough to highlight to this extent? Are millennials also not buying because maybe they also don't have the money or the security of jobs? Let's come to the root of what this question is. Are the auto slowdown issues reflective of a slower economy or of changing habits of a section of society? Which is a pretty fluid definition right now of who exactly we're talking about. Jaggi, where do you come in on this? Especially since you've been pretty scathing in your recent comments on the auto sector. I believe you've even referred to them as wimps in a piece you've written.
Yes, absolutely. I think the auto sector needs to be fundamentally restructured, and it needs to change its business model. The business model was based on two premises. One, a complete failure of public transport policy over the last 20 years, and huge steroid-driven growth in the last 6 years. Between say 2018 and 2014, there were very sharp duty cuts. After that, you had 5 years of continuous growth and a boom year after the GST was implemented. So on that high growth rate, you are having a fall. So, and most of these guys, for an industry that produces nearly 20 to 25 million vehicles a year, I think less than just about 15% is on exports. You're over dependent on a domestic market and tax cuts and things to grow. So I think shared mobility is going to take the world by storm for three reasons. One, urban congestion is going to increase in the short run as public transport investment goes up. So few people are going to use their private cars to stay in a traffic jam for 2 hours. They'd rather use an Ola or take a public transport if worse comes to the.
Yeah.
Second thing, I think the cost of Ola and Uber is far less than traditional taxis and all that. So I think we are on the cusp of a bigger boom in shared mobility. Only poor regulatory policies in states who are trying to protect legacy taxi and auto guys, that's creating a problem. But if you remove those things, you will find that shared mobility is going to take off tenfold in the next 5 years.
Yeah,
it's regulation that's stopping them. So I think the industry needs to be ready for this structural shift, and that's why I'm saying duty cuts will not do it.
Yeah, duty cuts is one part of it, but before I come to Gaurav, just a couple of things. The fact is that Ola, Uber and other such cab aggregators and their boom was contributing in a large scale to passenger vehicle sales as well, Jaggi. up to 35% if I am not mistaken. So, as their business has tapered down, perhaps that has also led to a tapering down of passenger vehicle sales. Secondly, if people don't want to be stuck in a traffic jam, they may not want to be stuck in an Ola or Uber either. And have we talked about the reality of surge prices? That whenever there is any kind of an issue, the first thing that will go off the radar are these aggregator services, and their prices will have surged immensely. At that time, people fall back on their own vehicles. Just your quick comment on these 3 points, Jaggi, before I move on.
See, the question is, as I said, the problem is one of regulation. The minute state regulators try to put a curb on shared mobility, that sector is not going to boom. It will also create high fares. Your surge fares come because of the shortage of supply, and actually the shortage of supply is largely due to regulatory reasons. So, I think this is going to change. This drop has been acknowledged by Maruti itself. Last year, the sales chief said that one of the reasons why our sales have slowed down is because of the increase in shared mobility. Each Ola actually tends to take 2 or 3 cars off the road, and people have stopped buying second cars because one car you may buy, second car if there is a need, you will use a shared mobility service. So, that is what is happening.
Okay, Gaurav, you want to come in on this debate? Because as shared mobility increases, then auto manufacturers have to rethink their very existence as a passenger product over time, especially if this generation doesn't want to buy cars, doesn't aspire for it.
See, this is somewhat it's right, but it is limited. This idea is limited only till the metropolitan cities. Okay, we understand that congestion is there. We understand that youth does not want it to buy. We understand they do not want it to drive. They are not getting inspired with the new vehicles. This is okay. This is fine. But till the time we are talking about urban youth. But when we talk about rural youth, when we move to the rural part of the country, we see that the penetration is very low. People are still get aspired with the new vehicle. We have ample opportunities available in the Indian market that which can make us grow for multiple years now. So, we cannot say that this is over, growth story in India is over. If it is so, then multiple car manufacturers, new car manufacturers which are going to enter in next few years in Indian market, they may stop entering it. But it is not going to happen because they understand that market is going to grow in next 5-6 years. This is a transitory phase. This is going to over. We are accommodating the changes, the effects which is coming from the Ola and Uber right now.
Okay, I want to open up the debate, and if you have a response, please raise your hand and I will come in to you, because then the basic question is this a transitory phase or is this a structural issue? If people's behavior patterns are going to change, then it's more than just perhaps a transitory economic slowdown. Yes, Mr. Sanghi, you want to come in?
So I wanted to just share an interesting episode. We were in the US attending the NADA auto convention, which is probably the biggest in the world, and as you know, US is the biggest market. And there the NADA chairman said that in San Francisco, he had invited 342 techies to understand the shared mobility concept. And he asked them a question: how many of you do not own a private car? To his surprise, 341 said we owned a car. The only one who said he didn't, he said, I don't own it because my wife owns it. So that is US, that is the most matured market where all techies are and where shared mobility has really grown like nowhere else.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective from the US market, but R. Sriram, let's come to more basic questions. We are saying that the metro will be preferred, but in a lot of cities and towns outside the bigger ones, the boom of passenger vehicles has also been because of a complete dearth of proper decent public transport. That situation frankly has not changed phenomenally, at least till now. There is no choice but to have private transport because the public transport just doesn't work. I would say cities like Mumbai, Delhi are exceptions, and Ola, Uber has improved the situation to some extent.
No, absolutely. I don't think private transport is going to disappear or people are going to stop buying cars. even in metros, you're going to see a lot of people still buy cars, especially the older generation, even the younger generation, when they come with some money or when they decide that they need a vehicle to move around, at least not in the city, at least outside, they will need a car. I don't think that's going to disappear. And as you said, public transport is really not there in the hinterland. If you go to the small towns and cities, it's coming up, but it'll take a bit of time, and that's not going to change. So private transport will be preferred, but the question is whether you are going to buy a car or you're going to buy a two-wheeler. That is still open to debate, and I suspect in many cities, or towns in the hinterland, people will go for two-wheelers rather than, because they are cheaper than cars. The other interesting point that I think the automakers need to consider is this. I mean, Jaggi made this point about the model, about the business model. I would just like to add here that the old business model was largely based on how much of capacity the dealer had to take in whatever the auto company gave to him. And the model was largely based on the fact that the auto companies would give a certain amount of cars, a certain amount of vehicles to the dealer every month. The dealer would take it, and he would take it happily also because the financing was always there. And if you are a Suzuki dealer or a Toyota dealer or a Tata dealer, banks were rushing or NBFCs were rushing to give you that money. But from last year onwards, the NBFC money to many of these dealers and the bank money to many of these dealers has either slowed down very sharply or stopped. So the old business model of just dumping the cars and vehicles on the dealers and hoping that, okay, they will, and that's why you have this inventory problem. You know, Rajiv Bajaj also talked about it yesterday, and a lot of other people are saying that there is an inventory problem. Why? Because you're just dumping cars on the dealer and hoping that he will be, I mean, this pull effect will be enough for the cars to be sold, but that's not the case, and that's not going to be the case. So you got to come up with a new model, and I don't think the old model is going to come back now, even if the credit growth picks up and we are back to normal, say by next year or so. So there is going to be, you know, something new has to be, they have to think of something new.
And even if there are GST cuts, that model may need to now change. You know, Gaurav, you want to come in on this point that the model may be broken. Newer segments of customers have to be identified, and maybe the value proposition also has to be improved from the auto industry.
I agree a bit of it, but yes, we have to understand that we are everywhere in the each and every segment currently. Okay, and when we ask for GST cuts, I think what auto industry has accommodated from last 1 year is multiple regulatory changes. Okay, and we are going to manufacture a world-class vehicle from April 2020. So for a transitionary phase, only the request what auto industry is asking is for a transitory phase support from the government, nothing else. I think that is what we are looking for it currently.
Okay, Jaggi, that transitory phase, a transitory cut is required right now because the millennials are not buying, ride sharing is really not working out, the model is broken. You know, they need a bit of succor right now.
No, I think they may need a little bit of help from April 1st when car prices rise because of the introduction of BS6 pollution norms. So that is the time when they may need a little bit of support. Till that time, I think it's best if the government says that we'll have a new scrapping policy which enables you to change your car for if you scrap your old one that's over more than 10 years or 15 years old. That's the kind of the help they can give. Giving a tax cut for old cars does not make any sense. In fact, the industry will just swallow it and do nothing about it. And in fact, one of the reasons why you saw such a sharp drop in August is because there has been an expectation that there will be a duty cut. Therefore, people are postponing purchases. The government should go ahead and say no cuts, but from April to June next year, we will give you a small rebate because you have to shift to BS6 vehicles. After that, we come back to the normal rate, whatever it is.
Okay, so obviously the whole millennial mindset, statement became bigger than perhaps it was meant to be because of all the memes and how this was used to point out by critics that there may not be a proper understanding of the issue. So that's where the whole controversy has started from as well. Though I think there has been enough clarification that this is one of the points that the finance minister has made. Gaurav, you want to come in? Is it unfair to blame only all the millennials, or unfair to, for the auto industry not to realize the dumps that they are in?
See, I think when we started the year, I think there was a huge uncertainty into the market. See, every consumer was waiting for the election to get over. Now, after the election, there was another uncertainty come. That's a BS4, BS6. I think government has already clarified it that they are not going to ban anything, which what they can do best. But the problem is that after 1st of April, okay, when you are going to have the increase in price, I think industry is prepared for it, consumer is prepared for it. But today, the fear is that there should not be any dead stock on 1st of April, which has been of BS4 vehicle.
Yeah.
That is the reason I think everybody is wanted to clear their inventory currently.
Yeah, but the fact is that the Finance Minister has said BS4 will very well still be valid. So those fears have been assuaged. Is this a behavioral problem or is this an economic condition problem, and should GST cuts be given right now? There seems to be no guarantee whether there will be any announcement of GST cuts even on 20th September when the next meet takes place.
So I was just wanting to clarify your point on BS4. Yeah. So what has been clarified is that vehicles which have been sold and registered as BS4 before 31st March, they will continue to run for the life of the vehicle, which means that if it's a 15-year one-time tax, then they'll run for 15 years. But it doesn't say that vehicles which have been produced before 31st March and are BS4 can be sold after 31st March. So theoretically speaking, we will need to have zero inventory of BS4 on 31st March. Not only inventory, but we need to ensure that all those vehicles that we sell before 31st March are also registered before 31st March.
Okay. Is the auto slowdown displaying an economic slowdown right now, a behavioral change? Are the questions of behavioral change exaggerated, or are they really enough to make such a huge impact on sales? And does the auto industry deserve a GST cut right now?
Okay, 2 points. I said at the beginning that this is not the most important or the paramount reason why the auto sales are going down. Millennial shift, the millennial buying habits is a factor, but it's probably not the only factor and certainly not the most prominent factor. There would be other factors as well. And again, I think we have discussed this in this program again before, that I think you need to take a very close and a very careful look at the level of household debt and how it has been increasing over the last 3-4 years. What you have basically seen in the last 4-5 years is that incomes have grown slowly or not so much at all, but debt levels at the household have increased and increased quite dramatically. I don't have the figures offhand with me, but I think it has nearly doubled in the last 5-6 years. At the same time, savings have not grown. So what has been happening is that people have been borrowing to spend and consume, to travel, to buy cars, to do whatever they want, buy two-wheelers or splurge. It's not contributed by savings, it's not contributed by rising income levels. Okay. And I think this is a very big factor that needs to be kept in mind if the government is really considering a GST duty cut. You want to cut GST duties? Sure. I mean, that will take care of the cost for some time, for some, up to a certain extent. Yeah. But what are you going to do about the level of household indebtedness? Because it is going to make everybody very, very cautious. They are not going to go out and buy if they think that the debt levels have reached a particular stage and the EMIs are, if they're paying 2 EMIs, they are not going to do anything else beyond that. Yeah. I think that's a very big factor, and I don't know what the government can do in this unless and until income levels really go up, competition increases, more jobs come into the play. I think that's what is really going to change things and change things for the better.
Well, meanwhile, I just want to say in conclusion, and obviously thank all of you for joining us on the debate. But meanwhile, I think everyone would want to get into the millennial mindset if they could. After all, practically speaking, think about it. Today, owning a car is more expensive than it was before. Your insurance costs are possibly higher. If you violate any traffic rules, your fines will be much higher. Parking has become more expensive, at least in big cities. If public transport is superb, like it should be, dependable, on time and widely available, if share aggregators or cab share apps don't fleece you when the going gets tough, well, then we all want to be millennials and we all want to feel like millennials and not bother to buy new cars. That is something the auto industry has to think about. because governments all across the world and in India as well are moving towards improved public transport. The proposition of a new car will have to go beyond just utility or desperation. Will it happen? Well, again, it's a millennial dollar question. That's all the time we have on India Development Debate, but don't go anywhere. We have an exclusive interview with Transport Minister Nitin Gadkari coming right up. He's answering all questions, the millennial question, the traffic fine question. It's the most important interview of the day. Don't miss it.